Edward is one of the oldest working engines on the island. He used to be an express engine, but was made obsolete by bigger and better engines. He was given a second chance though, and is now a hard worker to this day. The bigger engines didn't think that, however, and Edward's arc over the books is proving his worth time and time again, ending with him proving once and for all that he's just as useful as the other engines.
But just in the book.
Edward's another character I don't really think about too often. The tech engines kinda get all the love from me. His model, however, is the one I'm most proud of. So let's get into this, shall we? We'll start with his wooden railway model. So before we get into the model, I want to share my opinion on Wooden Railway's interpretation of Edward. Specifically the 1999 variant because that's my favorite. It looks pretty good, but it has its flaws, the most notable being the wheels. Wooden Railway as of 1999 had 4 different chassis. The 4-wheel short chassis, the 4-wheel long chassis, the 6-wheel chassis, and the 8-wheel bogie chassis. Edward is a 440, which is a wheel configuration that isn't really represented that well in any of the existing chassis. The 8-wheel chassis is the closest they had to the 440 config, but he would have just ended up looking too long. Remember, Edward's a small engine, so you can't use that. What it probably came down to was either the 4-wheel long chassis or the 6-wheel chassis, which they ended up going with the 4-wheel chassis. I don't really like this. The huge gap between the wheels is something that never sat right with me. That being said, I don't really think they had another option. 6-wheeled Edward is something I never want to see. I started Edward almost immediately after James. They look pretty similar, so I made some edits like removing the wheel arch, the smoke box support, and boom, Edward. I didn't change the cab because I was not about to paint the windows, and I liked the way it looked. So cool. The next thing to figure out was the chassis. I wanted Edward to have something close to his wheel arrangement, but I didn't want to use a standard 3-wheel chassis because I didn't really think that suited him. So I decided to get a little crafty. I took the 6-wheel chassis and took the leading wheel out of that chassis, and I got a smaller wheel from a push-along Rebecca and put him on the front. The only issue is that they didn't really touch the rails, so I cut the bottom of the wheel housing hole, and that fixed this issue. And the chassis is done. Time to print the body. I printed him, and while trying to take him off the bed, I broke his funnel. This is something that has never happened to me before or since, so I was a bit frustrated. I tried to make a new one with a wooden dowel, but it didn't really look that good, so I just printed him again. But first, let's make some changes. I made his funnel bigger so it didn't snap off again, same with the dome. James doesn't have these changes because I made him sometime before. I think the fatter funnel and dome make Edward stand out a bit against the others. Edward was the same as Thomas painting-wise. Black primer from Ace, cool blue and flag red from Apple Barrel. I then sealed it with Mod Podge and he stayed like this for a bit. I hadn't done the lining for most of the engines because I don't really have a steady hand. One night when I was listening to Henry's Housekeeping, don't ask me why I remember that, I had an idea. I painted the rims of the cabs and wheel arches to make up for the lack of boiler bands. I think it lifts the model a bit. But I would like to figure out how to do boiler bands in the future, so I printed out some faces and he's done. If I'm being honest, Edward's probably my favorite in the range. Just the way I was able to make him look like a K2 while also making him feel like Edward. Let's see him take his round, shall we?